Welcome friends. In this video I'm going over all the repairs, recalls, and maintenance I've done to my 2019 Raptor. This is an anecdotal story about my truck and does not represent all of the Gen 2s out there. Also, despite the thumbnail, I did not get the truck at 0 miles. I bought the truck in February 2020 and got it $9,000 under MSRP since it was a 2019 left on the lot. The truck did have about 400 miles on it, so I imagine that it was used as a courtesy vehicle. Regardless, I am the only owner listed on the truck, and my warranty started when I bought it in 2020. The first part I'm going to run through is the repairs, recalls, and issues. The engine break-in period for this truck is 1,000 miles, and I waited until 2,000 miles to conduct the first oil change. At this point in time, I had not been swallowed by AMSOIL's marketing and was using Mobil 1 for everything. I removed all the skid plates on the truck the first time to get all the oil off the surfaces, but when checking 100 miles later, I had a leak. So I took her in to get checked out at the dealer. The dealer put some dye in the oil, and I took her back later. She was diagnosed with a leaky oil cooler. They fixed her up and sent me on my way, for a couple thousand miles anyway. Since the truck was fixed and past the break-in period, I was finally taking her places and getting comfortable with speed. After each drive, though, I'd see a bit of what looked like fiberglass or muffler packing in the tailpipes. This time the dealer said they weren't sure, and they ended up just sending a note to Ford in case they had other reports, and then eventually the material just stopped coming out of the tailpipes. After that, it was smooth sailing until over 10,000 miles when my truck flooded on the passenger side. I took her in and it turned out to be a broken cab vent on the passenger side. I'm pretty sure that this only showed itself at this point because I had just bought a used tonneau cover, which likely directed the water straight onto the vents. Unfortunately, I already had the decked system, and I actually had to take everything apart and remove it before they could repair, since the Raptor vents go in from the outside of the cab, and the whole truck bed needs to be removed. At the same time, the dealer did the HVAC recall to tape a hose onto the condensation drain. Funny, I had the same issue while building a 2003 Jeep WJ. I'm not sure how Ford didn't take notes 16 years earlier, but they just didn't. What's not funny is that the dealer cut out the wet carpet padding in the passenger footwell and did not replace it. They also broke the clips on my fender and didn't replace them, so I had to go back and get everything fixed. After that, it was smooth sailing for 10,000 miles until the cam phaser recall in 2022. I didn't have any rattle, and I knew for a fact that my attention to maintenance and new use of AMSOIL would ensure that I would have no such rattle in the future, especially with this new coating. A few months later, in April, I started hearing some weird grinding when I first started driving the truck. All of the forums said that it had to be the IWE, or integrated wheel end, and since the 2019s all came with the recall coating already, I chose to replace the check valve and solenoid as a fix, but it didn't fix it, and I was scared to go to the dealer because I box springs, so I let it ride. I'll stop here to mention that also in 2022, the tailgate recall came out, but I never had an issue, so I never had anything done. It was kind of silly that you actually had to have it fail in order to get the recall completed. After that, I was solid until the end of the year when I started having water coming from my driver's side A-pillar handle, and it was flooding the driver's side wire tray. I took her into the dealer, and I had a terrible experience where the service representative refused my warranty by claiming that I wasn't the original owner. I spent a week back and forth until the manager finally just checked the computer and saw that I did buy it new. I don't know why the service representative refused to accept that someone like me could buy the truck new, but I can tell you that I've never been treated that bad at a BMW dealership. Anyway, they did the leak test and found that the sunroof seals had failed, and they ordered new glass. I unfortunately had to move in about 45 days, so I patiently waited, but the glass was 5 to 8 months back ordered. They taped my sunroof shut in the meantime, and my warranty expired while I waited and moved across the country. When the dealer in Georgia checked it out, they said they removed the tape and there was no leak and no issue somehow. I park outside under a tree, so I still have to clean out the drain hoses every 6 months, otherwise I'll get more leaks. Plus, trying to maintain the glass seals with silicone lubricant keeps the rubber from getting dried out and just not sealing as well. I have to say that the sunroof is the dumbest and worst part of owning this truck. Anywho, I spent most of 2023 working on the Jeep, and finally, when it got cold, I started noticing the noise again. So I found out that my driver's side upper ball joint was broken, and I replaced both myself, since Ford doesn't sell ball joints, only the upper control arm. With the ball joints fixed, I found that my wheel bearings were likely the culprit of the grinding, and I did replace both of them. So that was actually all of the repairs and issues that I've had with the truck over 65,000 miles. I'm certain that the last two were a result of the Eibach lift springs, so it's really only been the oil cooler and cab vent which were actual repairs. You know, since Ford calls sunroof issues standard maintenance. Unfortunately though, I did start getting cam phaser rattle about 2,000 miles ago. I thought that with all of my short interval oil changes I would get by, but nope. Maintenance does not keep poor engineering at bay. But speaking of maintenance, how did I spend $8,100 on maintenance over the past 5 years? Well, let's start with oil changes every 5,000 miles at about $120 each. I've actually done 14 oil changes over the 65,000 miles, and while the Fumoto drain valve makes it easy, I'm not sure if it's trapping sludge at the bottom of the pan, so I'll have to check that out. I used to do my own tire rotations when I had stock rims, since my spare didn't have a pressure sensor and I was only doing 4-wheel tire rotations. When I got the methods, I ended up just paying discount tire for a lifetime balance and rotation, since it's awful, when you're doing a 5-wheel tire rotation to try and recalibrate the pressure sensors per corner every 5,000 miles. I also changed the spark plugs every 15,000 miles. This one isn't necessary unless you're tuned, and you really only need to verify the gap and not buy new plugs. Otherwise, the manual says every 100,000 miles. I would change the air filter every 20 to 30,000 miles, but I have an AFE dry conical filter, so I've been knocking it out every now and then just to make sure that it's clean. I will need to clean it eventually, though. The cabin air filter, however, should be done every 20,000 miles to make sure that the air inside your cabin is fresh. The transmission fluid and filter are supposed to be changed every 150,000 miles, but I did a filter and fluid swap at 30,000 miles and a drain and fill at 60,000 miles. The front and rear differentials should be serviced with new oil every 150,000 miles also, or after fording in case water got into the differential through the breather or through the axle tubes. I have been changing mine every 15,000 miles and also before and after cross-country trips. That is the same for the transfer case also, which should be done every 150,000 miles, but I've done it in the same intervals as the differentials. The tires had tread still, but they were very worn out after 45,000 miles, so I swapped those out for some 37-inch KO2s. The Raptor's Fox shocks are intended to be rebuilt every 50,000 miles. I did mine at 59,000 miles, but in my case, I think it would have been fine for me to wait a little while longer. It was still nice, to have the peace of mind, and it was also a slight upgrade to have Texas Shock Works make over my struts and shocks with the exchange program. The drive belts should be inspected at 100,000 miles and replaced at 150,000 miles, if not earlier. For some reason, I thought it was earlier, and I ended up swapping out both belts at 61,000 miles. The truck started giving me low voltage warnings for the battery, so I swapped out the battery when it was 5.5 years old and the truck was at 64,000 miles. It did turn out that the problem was actually the cob access port and not the battery itself. The coolant should be done every 60,000 miles, and I did my coolant flush at 64,000 miles. You should check the brake pads and rotors every 7,000 miles and flush the fluid every 2 years. I did a fluid flush and replaced the brake pads at 28,000 miles. The latter was completely unnecessary. And then later on, I upgraded the front calipers and swapped the rotors and pads at 58,000 miles. Alright, so for final thoughts, I have been very lucky by having few real issues caused by Ford just being crappy. So there are a low quantity of issues, but the ones that there are can be deal breakers for some people, especially when you're waiting weeks to get an appointment with the dealer or the dealer treats you horribly. I do not have an extended warranty because of all the vehicles I've owned. I've only needed an extended warranty once. My own pride is another reason, since I'd like to think that there's no issue too big for me to handle. Also, I've read so many warranty denial stories that it made me nervous thinking that all my aftermarket items would cause a warranty denial on the truck. However, it did occur to me recently that it is faster and cheaper to put the intercooler back to stock than it is to do the cam phasers by myself. So I definitely feel stupid about not getting an extended warranty. My buddy Joe got cam phaser rattle after me, and 2 weeks later he was mobbing around with new phasers. So if you can, just get the warranty for this truck. When it comes to maintenance, I probably waste a lot of money in unnecessary intervals, which may or may not slightly improve the longevity of certain parts of the vehicle. I do believe, though, that if you're modifying the vehicle, you are automatically making it less reliable, so you will need to do more maintenance. Some maintenance items can be an opportunity to upgrade if it's financially feasible. Examples are buying the H8 battery instead of the H7, since they're similar prices, buying the 37s instead of 35s, since they're also around the same price, or buying a high output alternator instead of a stock one, even though it's double the price. Even upgrading the shocks might be worth it for you if you're okay paying 5 times as much as a rebuild for Fox factory shocks. This past week, I finished putting together and cross-referencing my list of cam phaser repair and preventative maintenance items during the repair. I ordered the parts from Lakeland Ford, and they should be coming in by the end of the month. I'm hoping to knock them out in early May. Anywho, that's all I got. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.